This week on a bonus episode of the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I are joined by a very special guest, David Cone, a former University of Michigan quarterback and a co-host on the Crain and Company on the Daily Wire. And it is an amazing honor to have him on. We're going to be talking about University of Michigan football. We're going to be talking about the current state of college football and what he sees Jim Harbaugh doing that is making sense for University of Michigan football. All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to a bonus episode this week of the Baseline Podcast. I'm Ben. That's Josh. He's back. He can't figure out his computer, so he had to use his phone because he just wasn't prepared. No. No, we are here with another special guest. I mean, back-to-back weeks. It's awesome. But Josh, who's our guest this week? Introduce this man. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of Michigan, Dad. I'm sorry. It's not my choice. So, but go ahead, Josh, take us away.
Yeah, so joining us today is one of the co-hosts on Crain and Company, which is the sports show over at the Daily Wire, David Cone, former Michigan quarterback, obviously with all the Michigan gear back there. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you for having me. Yeah,
this is awesome. Pleasure to have you on. I got to ask you first, when I first heard your guys' show was coming to Daily Wire and it was Crain and Company, with the Crain brothers and then David Cone, I immediately thought the former Yankees pitcher. Do you get that a lot?
I do get that a lot. I mean, my dad said that he named me David Cone 3 weeks before David Cone, the pitcher, debuted for the Yankees, and he was so mad because he wanted me to play sports, and he tried to convince me all through my youth to change my name to Adam, or to use my middle name, which was Adam, which is now actually my son's name. But I get it. I get it less now that, he's not pitching anymore, but it's interesting. One person did tweet out something right when I came over here to the Daily Wire. He tweeted out something like, David Cone, had some obscene gesture towards a woman in the bullpen one time, and this is such a bad example of such a bad representation of what the Daily Wire should hire. And so I think it was on Ben Shapiro's feed or something. So I retweeted it and I said, "You got the wrong David Cone. I would never pitch for the Mets."
Well, all right. Well, that's a little bit about David, guys. As I said, he was a quarterback over at Michigan. I believe he was over there. You were there 2006 to 2009. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So, you were there with a lot of good players over there. Chad Henne, Mike Hart, Mario Manningham. I believe Brandon Graham was there, Jake Long. Talk to me about your tenure at Michigan. What was that experience like playing at the big house on Saturdays and just the career there over there with Lloyd Carr and Rich Rodriguez?
I just get a smile even hearing you name some of those guys off because, it's the people, it's the relationships. Those guys are like brothers to me. I'm from South Georgia, from Statesboro near Savannah. That's where I grew up, and I got an opportunity to go off to the University of Michigan, the winningest football program in the history of the sport. It was a long way from home. My parents couldn't make it to as many games as they would have if I had stayed close to home, but it was an unbelievable experience. Chad Henne was obviously the starting quarterback when I was there, and he's the best that I've ever seen do it. And now he's backing up Patrick Mahomes, who's really one of the best in the NFL. So it just shows you there are levels to this. But you talk about Jake Long and Mike Hart. I was there with those guys, class acts. I love those guys. Brandon Graham was actually in my class. He comes on the show frequently. I keep up with him. We talk a good bit. And then I was there with Taylor Lewan as well, who just came on our show a few weeks ago, who's here in Nashville. And he was one of the first people I reached out to when I said, "Hey, we're going to move to Nashville. Our podcast got bought. We're going to head that way." And so he was very kind to welcome us in, and he came on the show. So you have to check that out as well.
Still very connected to the Michigan alum, it sounds like. So what's the buzz like in Michigan right now after the season that they just had, getting over the hump that is Ohio State, winning the Big Ten championship and becoming a playoff team?
Well, it's exciting. It is exciting. I mean, you look at Jim Harbaugh's tenure there. He was the golden child. I mean, how rare is it that you have a former standout quarterback be able to lead your team as the head coach? You look at what Scott Frost is able to do at Nebraska right now, and even Kirby Smart, who wasn't a quarterback, but what he's been able to do at the University of Georgia. I mean, Jim Harbaugh was the guy we wanted, and I'm a big Brady Hoke fan. You know, I was a big Brady Hoke fan because he recruited me to Ball State when I decided to go to Michigan. So when he got the job, I was pulling for him so hard, and he had that great first year. They won the Sugar Bowl, and I really, you know, I always hope the best for Coach Brady Hoke. But when Jim Harbaugh came in, it made a lot of sense, right? Especially with his ability to develop quarterbacks, with his ability to call offensive plays. I remember him with the 49ers running up and down the field. He's the head coach, and yet he's calling all of his own plays at a time when that wasn't really something that a lot of head coaches did. I mean, certainly Lloyd Carr wasn't calling the plays when I was at Michigan. Now, Rich Rodriguez was a bit when he came in, but it was still, you know, mostly it channels through the offensive coordinator. Now, I think that maybe Jim Harbaugh has given up the play calling duties as he's gone along, but certainly there have been frustrations for Michigan fans. You know, I mean, I got asked over the past 6-7 seasons, the question I get asked the most is, you know, what are your thoughts on Harbaugh? Should Michigan move away from him? Should they not move away from him? And you know, I was just saying, if Jim Harbaugh can't win at Michigan, you know, what options do we really have? You know, because he has had success, and what he did with a 49ers organization that, I mean, don't forget, I mean, after Steve Young's era with the 49ers, before Jim Harbaugh got there, I mean, it was atrocious, you know? And so I was very happy to see the success we were able to have last year, especially when it relates to beating Ohio. You know, sorry about that, Ben, back there, but that's really where it all starts and stops for us, right? If you can't beat your rival, you can't do anything else. And what I was saying on the show last fall is, you know, if you have to beat Ohio if you want to make the conference championship, and, you know, and you can't win the conference until you make the conference championship. And unless you win the conference, you can't make the college football playoff. And so once you knock down that huge domino, you slay that big dragon, then all of your other dreams are there for the taking. Now, as it relates to the college football playoff game against Georgia, you know, that was like nobody was beating Georgia, right? Nobody was beating Georgia that day. And even, you know, 2 weeks later, Alabama couldn't even beat Georgia, playing them for the second time. Now, to lose as badly as we did, I was just a little bit disappointed that we weren't able to be a little bit more creative on offense. My philosophy on that was, you're already playing with house money, right? You've done things that you haven't been able to do since you've been at Michigan. You beat your rival. You won the Big Ten. You made the college football playoff. At that point, if you're going to lose the game and you're going to lose big, let it all hang out. Don't be so vanilla on offense. You know, I thought Gaddis was a little too vanilla in that game, but at the same time, Georgia was so talented. Georgia was so physical. They're able to keep you inside that box a bit. But, you know, I think that they've had an interesting offseason. Both coordinators replaced. Jesse Minter comes in from Vanderbilt, which when you say the phrase, you know, our defensive coordinator came from Vanderbilt, it seems a little odd, but I'm telling you right now, the guy can coach. So he's very well respected in the coaching world. And so let's see. I don't know if Michigan can run it back. It's going to be so tough. Ohio's defense last year was sort of historically bad by their standards, and then you just happen to catch them at home in the Big House that year, and you happen to have Aiden Hutchinson who's setting the tone on the defense, and you happen to get great weather conditions for you when it's snowing. And so, you know, I had more fun watching Michigan Ohio last year than I've had in watching any sporting event for the last decade. But this can't become a situation for Michigan where you beat your rival once in a while. It can't become a situation where you beat them once in a decade, or you let another 15 years lapse. It just can't be. You have to go in there regardless of what's happening with recruiting, regardless of whatever, you know, if Michigan's going to participate or not participate as it relates to NIL. I don't know. That's a big question mark, but you have to figure out a way to beat your rival, even when you're not as good as them. And this is something that I talk about with the Crain boys all the time. This is what makes Auburn so special right now. Alabama's had the greatest dynasty that we've ever seen in college football. Auburn still figures out a way to beat them every other year at Jordan Hare. So Michigan's got to figure out a way to do that. And I'm hopeful for big things this season.
I have a question on back to Harbaugh real quick, because it just stuck out of my head as an Ohio State fan, as someone who, trust me, I went through that torment last year, and having to. But I like what you said though. Ohio State's defense did suck, and Josh knows this. We talked to Chris Drew last week. We all agree that the defense was bad and all that. My question about Jim Harbaugh is, do you think that winning against Ohio State last year saved his job, or at least put him out of the hot seat for another few years?
There's a part of me that says yes, but then there's another part of me that says, even after what happened during the COVID season, which I know is a little bit of an anomaly and a lot of coaches got passes, but after what happened that season and then not even playing Ohio, I mean, look, my philosophy on that was you figure out a way to play that game. I know that the entire world was shaken up. I know everybody was scared. Okay. Everybody was worried. There were a lot of uncertainties, but if you're going to play the college football season and you played everyone else on your schedule, you figure out a way to play that game. I don't care if you have to reschedule it in February and you play two-hand touch in the Michigan Diag, you figure out a way to play that game. I was very disappointed in that. So when you say that Jim Harbaugh lost again to Ohio, would he have been fired? He hadn't been, and he hadn't beat him up to that point. So I just feel like we had gotten to a point where Michigan was just like, this is our guy. We're all in on Jim Harbaugh, and maybe our glory days are past us, and maybe we just can't beat Ohio anymore. I don't know, but he did beat them last season, beat them handedly, and I still feel like Jim Harbaugh has a lot of good coaching days in front of him, a lot of good coaching seasons. What really disappointed me was to accomplish all of that, right? Jim Harbaugh did take sort of a pay cut and agreed to say, like, I'll do more of an incentive laden contract, right? Which ended up paying off. And now Nebraska's doing it with Scott Frost. I mean, if Scott Frost has a bang up year in Nebraska, you're going to see every AD in the country say, all right, wait, we're only going to pay you big bucks if you actually get something done here. But so he took the pay cut and said, I believe in myself so much that I will do an incentive based contract. And that was very impressive. But then the moment that you're able to accomplish all of these things that you've been aiming for at Michigan, then immediately there's talk about going to the NFL. That's what really surprised me. And then, did he get offered the job? Was he really going to Minnesota? Did they want him? Was Chicago interested? How about the Raiders? Like, I don't know. It became sort of an embarrassment, to be honest with you. And I hate to say it, but it looks like he sat down with Ward Manuel. They had a contract discussion. He said, this isn't going to happen again. Let's hope not, because every single year his name gets floated for the NFL, which usually is a good thing, right? That's usually, if your head coach is getting talked about for head coaching jobs in the NFL, that's usually a good thing. And look, Ryan Day is going to have to deal with that a lot. I think if Steve Sarkisian has success at Texas, he may have to deal with that. Ole Miss is going to have to deal with this with Lincoln Riley all the time. But you know who doesn't have to deal with this anymore is Alabama, right? Because Nick Saban already did that, and he's here and he's dominating at Tuscaloosa, right? Kirby Smart, I don't think Kirby Smart is at Georgia. He is going to build a dynasty at Georgia. There's not going to be talk about him leaving to the NFL every single season. So that disappointed me a little bit as it relates to Jim Harbaugh, but he seems now that he's committed to Michigan, coming off a big season. Now you have to run it back, and every day you have to have, an intense focus to be able to do that.
Yeah. I like what you brought up about the Auburn-Alabama rivalry, because that's something that we brought up with Chris, I believe, is that, Auburn always figures out a way how to win that game every now and then. And Michigan was able to do that last year, finally, after who knows how, I can't remember how long it had been.
We don't need to bring up details, really.
Right.
Let's just put it this way. The last team they beat was with Luke Fickell as head coach. I just want to, that
is a fact.
Just want to point that out.
But let's talk about a little bit of that aftermath. You said that, Harbaugh was doing those NFL interviews. Both coordinators are gone. A lot of the leaders on that defense, like Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo, Jackson Hill, Josh Ross, are gone now. A decent amount of the offensive skill is still there on offense, like McNamara and JJ McCarthy. That's going to be an interesting QB battle there. But Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards in the backfield, Ronnie Bell's coming back healthy. Andrell Anthony, I thought, was pretty solid last year. And then Cornelius Johnson. So where do you see Michigan kind of going this season? What would be a reasonable expectation you would have for Harbaugh and the Wolverines this season?
My expectation is always the same. And it was the moment that I walked in there the very first day of practice with Coach Lloyd Carr, and you're talking about Jake Long and Mike Hart, is to win the national championship. I don't care about any of this, talk about, well, what we accomplished this last season, so a good season for us this year would be, X, Y, Z. No, you want to win the conference, you want to beat your rival, you want to win the national championship. And so really that should be the standard every single year. But when you look at what they bring back offensively, it is going to be, it's going to be explosive, or at least it has the opportunity to be. When you think about what we were able to do last year with Ronnie Bell getting hurt, and now you add him into the mix, and now Donovan's going to have another year under his belt, that's very exciting. As for the quarterback battle, I was wanting I thought that JJ McCarthy was used nearly perfectly last season, to be honest with you. And there's this thought process that you need to play one quarterback. You can't have a two platoon system, but that's not really what it was. They were able to use JJ McCarthy in these very interesting ways. Now, there were times when he went into the game where you knew that this was going to be a running play, which, you can't be predictable in this game. But I at least understood that, they may be showing something against Northwestern to set something up against Michigan State, right? Like that's how that game works a lot. I know he's good on his feet, but we had to use him in other ways. That's why I thought in the semifinal game that maybe we could have an opportunity to include JJ McCarthy more in the game and to be a little bit more creative. The difficult part with me, even though I was very excited in many of the ways that they used him last season, the difficult part is that Cade McNamara was having, I thought, the most efficient season that I've seen a Michigan quarterback have since I played with Chad Henne. Now, certainly Denard Robinson had very electric years and did things that you might not see a college quarterback do again. But Cade McNamara was extremely efficient. And so I think, look, it's always good to have multiple great quarterbacks. The more great players you can have at that position, the better. We'll see how things shake out. Obviously, we are, 2 weeks away from fall camp. So when August starts, that's really where you find out the answers for your team. And hopefully they had a good spring and they something that they can build off of. But when you talk about losing a lot of pieces and losing Aiden Hutchinson, losing Dax Hill, I mean, again, to talk about Alabama, to talk about Georgia, 5 picks in the first round. I mean, look, if you want to be a serious contender in this country, you're going to lose great players all the time. That's the nature of the business. You have to figure out a way to reload and not rebuild. And the same goes for Michigan.
Right. I think LSU, still trying to recover from all those guys that they lost in 2019. Like, got to be able to continuously at that level.
See, that's a culture problem, and I don't understand. I don't know what went off the rails for Ed O down in Baton Rouge. I don't understand. It sounds like it was a lot of character issues, and he's working out some things in his own life, but he was the perfect coach for that university. And to be able to put together a season like that, I actually listed that LSU team as the greatest college football team that I had seen. You can put, the USC from 2004 up there and some of those Miami teams, certainly. But LSU's never going to have a problem recruiting. So when you talk about reload, they can probably do it better than anyone because they can just put a fence around that state, right? I mean, LSU is Louisiana. They're always going to have big recruits. So when you see the kind of seasons that they've had the last 2 years, those are culture problems. And I expect Brian Kelly to come in there and get that stuff fixed fairly quickly.
I had a question about the recruiting at Michigan. And I don't know if Josh is going to touch on this, but Lloyd Carr's grandson decides not to go to Michigan, and Dante Moore decides to go to Oregon. Does that, as a Michigan alumni, as someone that has, played in that on that field, has been around, the program, does it worry you that there are guys that are kind of slipping through the fingertips of Harbaugh? Does it go back to the whole NFL thing where there's a lot of uncertainty, or what do you think that is in that game?
I don't know the details on the CJ Carr situation. And my answer is this, and it's funny you asked this because I was talking about this on a 30-minute drive home with one of my buddies yesterday who also went to Michigan. I don't know where these coaches actually have these guys ranked. All right. When you look at what Bill Belichick, just take for an example, what he was able to do with Tom Brady in the 6th round of the NFL draft. Like, I don't know how these guys are actually evaluating these kids and where they have them on their rankings, right? We see the rivals.com, we see the 247 and the scouts and all that kind of stuff. But, take Alabama, for instance, when it comes to Arch Manning. And we had Mike Farrell on this week, and it was actually one of our bigger viral moments with the sport because I asked Mike Farrell, a national recruiting director, how much of Arch Manning's recruitment had to do with his physical skill sets and how much had to do with his last name. And Mike Farrell said if the kid's name was Arch Smith, he'd be a 3-star quarterback. Now, based off what I've seen from him, I don't necessarily think that's the case, but maybe he wouldn't be a 5-star. And it goes to my point here as it relates to Alabama, because I had heard throughout the offseason that Alabama was even bigger on the kid that they got, Eli Holstein, who is their commit coming in. So Would Nick Saban, would he have liked to have Arch Manning come in? Yeah, I'm sure he would have, because, the ceiling is so high, but also because he's going to bring in a lot of other recruits with him. So maybe if you like this other kid better, but you also would take Arch Manning, maybe you go and you take 2 quarterbacks that class. I'm sure Kirby Smart was thinking the same thing at Georgia, but now we know Arch is committed to Texas. So let's apply that same thing with CJ Carr. He is a Michigan legacy. He's right there in the backyard over at Saline High School. I don't know where Jim Harbaugh has him ranked. Maybe he has a couple guys that he has listed as better than him, who he wants to go after. And you start to get into a situation where it's like, okay, but he's a Michigan legacy. Maybe we could get a lot of other recruits for him. He would be a Michigan man when he comes in. Should we take him as well? Should we take 2 quarterbacks? That could be the situation. So maybe it's not that big of a loss in Jim Harbaugh's eyes, or maybe the kid is unbelievable and this was a home run for Michigan and they blew it. I don't know. I think only time will tell as it relates to those 2 names that you've brought up, especially now that we're seeing good quarterback play at Michigan, right? I mean, like I said, last season with Cade McNamara and JJ McCarthy, like clearly something is working at that position with Jim Harbaugh after it hasn't been the last few seasons, because he was thought of as the quarterback whisperer. And that has been a position where we haven't had a lot of success since he's been there. But now, I think that that's one of the stronger positions on the team coming up this season and as well as last season. So let's just see how it plays out with some of these recruits coming up.
Yeah, for sure. You talked a little bit about the recruiting process there. Can you talk to us about the recruiting process you had with Lloyd Carr getting you over to Michigan? You said you were from Georgia, so I mean, that's a pretty long ways. What drew you and what do you think drew Michigan to you?
Well, I'm from South Georgia, and my high school ran the wishbone. So I handed the ball off the majority of the game, and I was lucky if I threw the football 5 or 6 times a game. My dad wanted to send me to private school when I was entering high school. And my 8th grade year, Statesboro High School had just won the state championship. They went 15-0 under head coach Buzz Busby, who is still even saying his name still intimidates me. Even though I talked to him last week and he is doing well. But they went 15-0, and I think they won the state championship like 52-10 or something like that. And so like that is what I'm seeing just a matter of months before I go into high school. And there was so much buzz around the community. And I was like, this is how you play football. This is high school football. This is the level that I want to play at. If I'm not good enough, or if I'm just wrong for the system and they are just going to run the football and they want to incorporate some triple option stuff, then we could decide that in a few years. But I think it would be good for me to play for this high school with all the kids from the middle school teams that I had gotten to know. And so that's what I ended up doing. And, kudos to Coach Busby, because he said, yeah, I mean, you're the slowest quarterback I've ever seen in my life. But he said, you take care of the football, and that's mostly what I need. He said, those running backs back there are fast. That's why they play running back. Turn it off, hand it off to them. Don't ever fumble. Don't ever get a play wrong. Audible when you need to, because that was one of his big things when we were running the wishbone, is to make sure plays were going to the correct size. And then when I need you to throw the football, be accurate and make good decisions. So ended up starting as a sophomore. We went to 3 straight state title games. I lost as a sophomore. I lost as a junior. We won my senior year. We went 15-0. So we were sort of able to cap off that from what I was seeing as an 8th grader down there. But really what it was because I didn't have a lot of passing reps in games, my dad would take me to camps every summer. And so we made all the usual routines. I was a Florida State fan growing up. We hit Florida State, Georgia Tech. We went over to Auburn. Auburn had 2 quarterback commits that season coming out. We went up to Louisville. I was thinking about signing with Louisville. That was when Bobby Petrino was there. They had just had the #1 offense in the country. But really, I had a good showing over at Auburn when Tommy Tupperville was the head coach. And Al Borges was the OC, who just came on our show last week. And
right.
Al Borges said, it was raining that day. I threw the ball well. And he said, we just don't have a spot for you, but I love the way you throw the football. And there was a high school coach there who I guess got in touch with Scott Leffler at Michigan. And somehow they connected with my father, and Coach Leffler asked my dad if he would bring me up to camp at Michigan. And we said, sure, because we're going to do a Michigan, Purdue, and Wisconsin, like Big Ten tour. And so I went up there, I threw the ball for their camp in Ann Arbor, and I didn't throw as well as I had at some of the other camps. But I think that they really liked my height. They liked my ability to throw the football. I fit in with a lot of things they were doing there. and they asked me to stay for the next day. Coach Carr asked me to stay, and he offered me a scholarship in his office the next day with my family. And my mom, Ben, who is from Columbus, Ohio, like leapt through the roof basically at the thought of me getting a college scholarship. And she's never worn scarlet and gray since, I must tell you.
Oh my goodness.
But it was an unbelievable moment. I had no intentions of going that far away from home for school, but it was a situation where the South was locked up. Matthew Stafford went to Georgia, which I know Georgia is still reeling to this day for recruiting him over me. And Tim Tebow went to Florida, Josh. And so same thing there. I'm sure that they missed out on me, and they're really upset about it. But the South was locked up, and so I said, I'm going to go to the University of Michigan, and I'm glad that I did. And then when Rich Rodriguez came in, of course, I thought about transferring. I thought about transferring every single day. And I talked even with him about it, and with his quarterback coach, Rod Smith, who I became very close with. Should I transfer? I thought about going to North Carolina,
to Ohio State,
other schools. I mean, that, at that point it was like, I just want to play college football. So whatever had to happen. But, it wasn't in the cards for me to go play in the NFL. I knew if I was good enough to play in the NFL, I could do so from Michigan, even as a non-starter, because Matt Gutierrez had just done it with sitting behind Chad Henne, and he played for the Patriots for a long time. So I knew that option was always there if you're good enough. But, I ended up hanging up the cleats. I got involved in video production, and now, I'm able to co-host this show with the Crain boys over at the Daily Wire. So it's everything's working out how it's supposed to.
Yeah, you said that you got into like more production, like behind the scenes. At what point were you able to, I guess, transfer to being an on-air talent, like actually doing some talking about the sports instead of just being behind the camera, maybe?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, when I got done playing college football, which is so regimented and there's so much discipline required, I sort of had this creative part of my brain that, I really began using. And I had a desire to get involved with video production and filmmaking and music. I was writing songs, I was playing music, I was starting to play some shows. And so it made sense to go to Atlanta, which was my home state, where there was a lot of filmmaking going on. There was a hot music scene. And so I was able to do that, not really knowing exactly what I wanted to do, but I wasn't going to go to law school right away, which is what my father wanted. And I wasn't going to go get into coaching football right away, which was what some of the coaches who had coached me wanted. I saw that there was this, that I had this ability as it related to video production and sort of the creativity that you have to be able to create good content, but then also using my football background to be able to run a set and keep things organized and, be punctual and all that sort of stuff. And so I ended up having some success early as it relates to directing and producing content for the PGA of America and the Atlanta Falcons and the Smithsonian. I think a lot of people like my sports background. So I just started directing and producing a lot of sports content. And that was really, what I was doing. I was running a video production company. I was happy with that. But I was also playing music. So I was sort of I was going on stage, I was playing songs. And so I was kind of having my face on photo shoots as it relates to that and some of the marketing things, but I was never like an on-air talent necessarily. But when I met Jake Crain, we got introduced from a marketing executive in Atlanta, and he had the J-Boy show at that time. And I had a video production company, and he was audio only. And he said, look, I want to go on video. I'd like, would you be interested in producing the show for me from a video standpoint? And we met for an hour because I was pitching a show to Spotify at that time. It was, about playing the position of quarterback and be able to create content in a cool way as it relates to that, something that also tied in with my background. And so we talked about that. We were talking about how can we both sort of like merge our ideas together. And I told him, my wife was pregnant at that time with our first child. And I said, I can dedicate a certain amount of hours per week. I still have clients that, where I have to make a living, but we made it work through last winter and last spring. And then into the summer is really where things started to change, because I was producing a show for him where it was just interview based. And we talked about how could we actually go live and have segments. And he wanted to get his brother involved to actually have a live chat feature so that, we could engage with fans. And we were trying to brainstorm exactly how to do this. And, he was always trying to talk to me at the producer table, but I didn't have a headset to be able to talk back to him. And so when Colin Cowherd picked us up for his network, The Volume, we did a trial one day up there in the studio where we were at, where Blaine, Jake's brother, and myself had cameras and a headset as well. And we just talked about college football. And then the interviews that Jake had been doing was sort of a piece of the show, right? And after we finished that first demo, we were like, wow, that was electric. That was really great. And college football was just around the corner. It was about to ramp up. We knew that we were going to have Colin Cowherd's network behind us, and we had just gotten access to be able to record from the College Football Hall of Fame as our set, which was right there in Atlanta. And again, this took a lot of hours, hours for which, we weren't making really any money at that time. We were doing it because we were hustling, and we were trying our best to put out great college football content. And it really took off. It was amazing. I mean, kudos to Jake Crain and his brother Blaine for including me, not only in a production capacity, but as someone who could get on camera and talk about college football. And also it helped that Michigan was good last season. I mean, we were mostly focused on SEC football. That's what Colin wanted from us. But we were talking about Oklahoma. We were still talking about Southern Cal, and then Michigan happened to be good. And so, I was able to be included from my perspective from that standpoint. And then when Ben Shapiro messaged us late last fall and said, I really enjoy your guys' show. Would you come be the sports show for the Daily Wire? You don't have to focus on any politics. You can just talk about sports. He said, we just want to get into the sports game. And we want to do it with people who know what they're talking about. The only stipulation is, could you move to Nashville? And we all said, let's give it a shot, and now we're here.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's such a good story. I think one of those aspects you mentioned, the interaction with the fans through the Booster Club or the Twitter mailbags and stuff like that. Like, I think that's a big reason why people love your show so much. And it's something that you just can't do on TV, like interact, with a live broadcast like that. But with the setup that you guys got, that's something that I think draws a lot of people in. Would you agree with that? That's something that's really helped you guys out with was the fan interaction?
Without a doubt, it was one of Jake's better ideas, I thought, and it's very difficult to pull off as it relates to all the moving pieces of, one, going live is tough, but then also to feature people's questions and comments, while at the same time, there are a lot of other considerations here as it relates to production and sponsor reads and things like that. But you say that it's one of the best aspects for fans liking our show. It's one of my favorite things about our show. I love, like, there are fans in this chat every single day. Like, some of them tune in every single day and have for like over a year and a half now. And I feel like I know them. I don't know them personally, but I feel like, I know that, say, Sister Riggs is going to be in the chat and she's a big Utah fan. You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot of fun for us. Or I know that my buddy Dave is going to be in the chat and he's always going to be saying something about Michigan. And so that makes it a lot of fun for us. And it feels honestly like that's why it's the Booster Club. I mean, it is a community. This is sort of a grassroots effort where we feel like we're at a bar talking with our friends about all the hot sports topics of the day.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I know you did want to wrap up around 8:30 your time, so we'll just end this with one final question. And I mean, you guys got it today too, so I want you to be able to get ready for that. But can you talk to me about the "Get Off My Lawn" segment that you guys do? Because my favorite segment I know that you do kind of has like a little bit of an old school aspect, but also kind of like a, hey, let's just stop messing around and get back to the love of the game kind of a thing. Can you talk to me about Get Off My Lawn and maybe explain that to our listeners who've never heard?
Well, I love that you asked that question, and I'm a little surprised at how it's taken off. But let me tell you the origins of this first. This thing was all Jake's idea, to be honest with you. So Jake Crain and his brother Blaine Crain, they always, they sort of poke fun at me as being the old curmudgeon of the group, right? And especially I've been able to like let that side out a little bit more that we've been over here with the Daily Wire. But so they call me the old curmudgeon, and Jake would say, man, you're like Clint Eastwood from Gran Torino. You know what I mean? Like you don't like when you get bad service at a restaurant, you expect people to be professional and to make their bed and to stand up straight. That's probably come from like years and years of reading Jordan Peterson's work, who actually got to meet last week, which was
awesome.
Because Jordan Peterson has now joined Daily Wire Plus. So, I mean, I come from, in my household with my parents growing up, they were strict, they were disciplinarians. And so, there's this aspect of, there's a certain way that you should conduct yourself. And so Jake and Blaine kind of made fun of me. And Jake just said, we were talking about how can we produce extra content for our YouTube channel to really grow the YouTube channel in addition to our daily show once we got here. Like he was doing some extra stuff when it came to March Madness and the Final Four. Blaine was doing some extra stuff. And so he's like, man, you should do that. You should do a segment where you're just like, you're an old curmudgeon. Cause I always come in here talking about, man, can you believe that Rob Manfred with the MLB did this? Like, this is awful. This isn't how you run a sports organization. Or Roger Goodell's running the NFL to the ground. He's like, man, do a segment where you let your curmudgeonness out, and it's called Get Off My Lawn. And so I said, okay. And so I did a demo in here one day, right here in this studio, for some bonus YouTube content. And Jake said, no, it has to be on the show. He's like, put this on the show. And I was like, okay, well, that could be cool too. And then we just we'll break it out. And so when we were first launching here, the MLB was in a lockout, right? And so naturally that was an easy one to start with. And so Jake said, do it every Wednesday after the sub break. You do it once a week. You do a Get Off My Lawn. And so I started with Major League Baseball, and we have a nice little compilation going now, I believe. This past week was Nick Kyrgios, the tennis player, because,
oh my goodness,
I mean, who doesn't want that guy to get off their lawn, but I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful that Jake had the idea, for me to do it, because it's so up my alley. It's so easy, because I see these things in life that I think, we can be doing better on, especially as it relates to our culture here in this country, and a lot of the things in sports that I think, sports can be such a great outlet to instill discipline and punctuality and all those things in our youth. And I don't know if we're necessarily using it in the right way these days. So I don't know. I try not to come off as the old, 85-year-old on the show, but at the same time, I do have some opinions as it relates to the way that I think young people can stand up straight and make their bed. And so that's the segment.
I got
awesome.
you, man.
That's awesome.
I don't know what to do as like in merch sales, but as soon as you guys Get Off My Lawn shirts,
I'm gonna 100%.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's good to hear, because it is coming. Yeah. I'll keep you guys in mind.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, David, so much for coming. Enjoyed this conversation. Would you want to plug in your social so people can find you guys at the Daily Wire, and then maybe on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those things?
Yeah, for sure. It's David Adam Cohn on Twitter. And I wasn't much of, for Twitter before I started doing this with the Crain boys. I tried to stay off social media as much as I could. But now it is a wonderful tool to be able to engage with our fans, the Booster Club, like you were talking about, or for us to even engage. I love what you guys are doing. And first of all, let me just say what a fine Michigan football helmet you have. And I know that you are a Florida fan, but I just want to say that thing it really fits well on you. Okay.
Well, thank you, sir.
So David Adam Cohn on Twitter, and I've been very active on there. That was one of the things that I really learned from Jake, honestly, was how he was always engaging with our fans. And so now there are three of us, and I try and be as active on there as possible, and Instagram. And we have actually our TikTok is what has really exploded now. Again, not something I would have ever downloaded or been interested in, a year ago, but now it really is great for us to take some of that bite-sized content and put it out there for people to check out during the day. And then, it's Crain and Company. It's a daily show every single day, 2 p.m. Central. That's 3 p.m. Eastern. It's on YouTube. It's on the Daily Wire. You can download it on Apple, Spotify, just like what you guys were talking about earlier on all the podcast platforms. So please check us out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, David, so much again. And if all of you that are listening to this show, head on over there. I love the Daily Wire. Yes, all the way in Hungary. I might be the only person living here that watches any of it, but I know that I truly enjoy it. So we want to thank you. There's no hard feelings. Okay. Your mom was born in Columbus, so it gives me a little bit better of a neutrality right there. But
let's just say I haven't heard from her side of the family for a long time.
Well, David, thank you so much for jumping on here with us. We wish you the best of luck for this coming season. Your show's coming up, and hopefully you guys will have success and continue to grow in what you're doing.
I really appreciate it, guys. This means a lot to me. Congratulations on y'all's success as well. And please have me back on again.
Absolutely.
Let's do something around Thanksgiving time, you know.
Oh,
I won't
oh,
be I'll be a lot more on edge and I won't be as friendly, but that'll be a good week.
oh, that'll be a great week. Oh, I can't wait.
Oh, we're going to take advantage of that.
Anyways, thank you so much, David. We appreciate it. And hopefully we'll have you back on really, really soon. So thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Once again, I just want to say thank you to David for jumping on and hanging out with two strangers, one that's across the pond and one that is in Indiana. And it was really cool. I know Josh and I both, after we recorded the segment, as you can tell, it was split up. And if you're listening, you can't tell because I'm amazing. We just were like, just loved the opportunity to just talk with someone that was very knowledgeable about the business and also about college football. Besides, he's a Michigan fan. I'll have to deal with that. Anyways, Josh, what were your thoughts on this conversation? How did you feel about some of the things he said and maybe the differences from what Chris said and things like that?
Yeah, I had a blast. Like you said, David's pretty knowledgeable. He's got like a player's aspect. He's got and media aspect as well from behind the camera and in front of the camera. So he's definitely grinding his way up to where he's at now and has a lot of, versatility and different perspectives. But I guess I'm surprised that how maybe optimistic he is about, the future that the Wolverines are going, because and that's like, I wonder if that's how most of the Michigan fan base is, because we talked to a lot of Ohio State fans and what their view is on where Michigan's heading and where they think they're going, not in such a good direction. But Michigan seems to, the Michigan base seems to be optimistic after last season. Like it can only go up from here.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Like, especially the point when I brought up the whole like CJ Carr and Dante Moore situation. And it was very interesting to hear his opinion on that and kind of how he was kind of like, like he wasn't as bummed as I think, like, we talked with Chris and all three of us were kind of like, wow, this is like a huge loss for Michigan to like lose someone that's in your backyard. But then to hear his thoughts, like, yeah, but we don't know if they were hits or misses, but it goes back to what, I've heard, Zach Smith and Chris talk about on their show about, we don't know where coaches have these guys, put. If we trust what, Ryan Day believes or what, Jim Harbaugh believes, then that's all that matters if you're a fan of that school. So it gave me a new perspective, I guess, like not always relying on like, okay, yeah, this was the grandson of Lloyd Carr, but maybe he wasn't that highly touted and maybe he wasn't as high up, or like David said, was like, or he could literally be a miss that they never got back. So I don't know. It was very interesting.
I've heard Zach talk about some guys that he was very high on that maybe the recruiting guys weren't really as hyped on, or Urban Meyer wasn't even hyped on. Like, I think some of those guys were like Ben Victor had, I believe, fight Urban to be able to get him into the building. Austin Mack was not very, I don't think he was initially invited to the Army All-Star game. And that was a guy that Zach was very happy to be able to get. And Chris Olave, kind of like hidden in California, 3-star. Not nothing that the recruiting guys were super high on, but he saw something over there. And pulled the trigger on it. Like, the recruiting guys like hit and miss all the time. Like, it's kind of fun to go back and look at like old classes, like where guys were ranked. And I'd say more often than not, they get it right. Like, you'll see some names that you're like, okay, this guy dominated at the college level. He was a first round pick in the league. So, I think that's all you can really do as a recruiter. Like, maybe you don't know how they'll do in the NFL, but if they end up being a superstar at college, I'd say you did your job pretty good. And the Alabama example too with Arch Manning and Eli Holstein, I thought was a prime example of the situation talking about with Michigan, because that was somebody that Alabama, I remember when they initially signed that was a big deal for them. And now we're starting to see a lot of stuff about Arch come out. Like, I saw a video on Twitter. I don't know if it was like clipped from like a lot of different games or if it was all from one game, but they showed 5 interceptions that looked pretty ugly. And the 3-star, if he wasn't named Manning, that one analyst they brought on to the Crain show, that was kind of interesting too. I thought, it's like, are we going to see Arch really fall off? Because he really hasn't been at any camps either, like showcases stuff. Are they hiding something?
Yeah, it is interesting, but I think it goes back to even what David was talking about, like even like his process, right? Like his recruiting process, like when he was talking about, he was at a wishbone offense, which me and you both being in Ohio, we see a lot of that in high school, at least back when we were in high school, where you would see this team that would throw maybe twice a game. You look in the, you'd open the newspaper, right, the next day and you look at the stats and it was like 1 of 5 for 12 yards, right? Like
One of
that
the
was a normal thing.
WEO High School, they run like 4 different running backs and do a lot of misdirection stuff. And the quarterback, like, I want to say like it was 5 games into last season. He had only attempted like 5 passes all year, and they were 5-0, and they were demolishing teams like 49-0, crazy stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think it shows that like, coaches look for specific aspects of a player. And I think we hear that from all the different, analysis guys to coaches to everyone. It's like these coaches, these programs have specific guys in mind. It doesn't matter if you've thrown the ball for 5,000 yards or if you only throw the ball for a total of 600 yards your whole career. If you fit the aspect, and like he said, he went to camps. I think we forget that it's not all about the game performance. It's about what do you show in the off season. Like I remember when I played basketball, I went to Cedarville's camp, and I remember, coach would say like, hey, if you want to play at the next level, this is what you have to do this next season. And that to me makes me realize like, wow, they do care about your off-season performance, what you do, what's your mind like, what's your strength like. And that is really fascinating to me.
Yeah. I think another story that Zach has shared on Menace before is Cam Newton, like showing up at Florida's Friday Night Lights. I believe he was a 3-star, he said, and then he left the camp not too long after that, and he was the number 1 QB in his class. So it's like it doesn't all necessarily or what you do on the field isn't the most important part, I guess. Like, I mean, you can't suck on the field, right? But maybe doesn't showcase your skills to the fullest, or maybe you're a run first school, because that's pretty common at the high school level, or maybe you don't have the receiver personnel to be able to be a pass first team. And so you don't really get to show who you really are.
Yeah. And I think that's like a really, it is a good point. And I think what I loved about what David said, on today's show was just like his honesty about like, I think because as a Ohio State fan, right, this is coming from a Ohio State perspective, like, we look at the rivalry and you always like, you kind of like, oh, Michigan's struggling. This Harbaugh thing was like a drama, which he did say was like, that kind of sucks the way it happened with the whole NFL job and stuff. But it is interesting to hear someone that's very positive about the way Michigan's going. Like you said earlier, like to me as an Ohio State fan, I just see like them missing on recruits. They're struggling in certain areas. And, oh, was this a one-time thing? But then I realized like, on the other side, Michigan might be saying the same thing about us or their kind of shows. And it's fascinating to me because you get to learn more about like maybe someone that has more of an inside perspective rather than just hearing, Chris or I talk. And I would love to hear Chris's response to David talking about just Ohio, which obviously he cares about the rivalry, which Chris, just so you know, if you're listening, yeah, rivalry matters, Chris. Just saying. I'm going to put that out there right now. Freaking matters.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. I had a thought and I just lost it. What was it? It was, like how much of the Ohio State national championship hype is all about, I guess, prediction, right? Like what we saw last year. Like, Stroud can definitely like throw it better than I think anybody in college football, but he was a little bit soft last year. And can he have that dog mentality? Can he use his legs to maybe extend plays and maybe go and get that 3rd and 3, like first down run, like what we see with Bryce Young do over at Alabama? Wide receivers right now, I mean, they just lost 2 first-rounders, and we know that they're recruiting a lot of talent in the building, but will it translate on the field? Julian Fleming, we really don't know. Has he kind of topped out? Are these other guys like Marvin going to live up to like these super high expectations that we have? Like we've seen him do it at the Utah game. I know the Utah defense was a little bit depleted with injury and some COVID guys and just NFL. So they weren't exactly at their full strength, but we still saw Marvin do it on the field. So will he be able to continue to do that on a consistent basis? And then the defense wasn't anything to rave about last year, but Jim Knowles is in the building, and will his system get into these guys' heads just after one season? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things that have to happen for Ohio State to get to that national championship, and a lot of it is kind of like prediction. I think it'll happen. Like we said it with Chris last week. I think Ohio State's going to go like 11-1 the regular season and win the national championship. But when you're on the Michigan side of things, I mean, you're looking at a team that just lost the rivalry, lost 2 games last season, didn't make the playoff, missed the Big Ten championship game then you lose Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and you're like, what do you have to be so hyped up about? Like, I guess that's kind of a little bit of fan delusion, I guess, from both sides possibly, but it's also kind of fun to discuss and predict. And I mean, that's what we're trying to do in these preseason stuff, right? Like try to predict how these teams might be able to finish.
Yeah. And it is fascinating. I think just overall, right? Like just everything that's going on. And again, we don't know, again, their predictions, and it will happen whenever it happens, like I think we'll know after week 1 for Ohio State, are they legit? If they go out and get beat by Notre Dame by 15, 20 points, then I'm going to have serious doubts. And it's the same thing after the Oregon game. You can ask any of my friends after the Oregon game happened. I was like, yeah, I don't see this team bouncing back. And that's an Ohio State fan who's very like, hey, I want them to win a national title, but you see after certain games, if they're not having that dog mentality.
Yeah, you brought up Oregon. Like, I think most Ohio State fans thought they were back after that Michigan State game later on. I don't know if you were in that group, but it was kind of
I wasn't.
Just going to the Big Ten.
I knew that there was that Michigan game. I knew that was the test. It wasn't the Michigan State game. Like, it wasn't any of those games. I knew we were going to win most of those games leading up to Michigan. There was 2 teams on the schedule I was worried about last year. It was Michigan and Oregon. And those are the 2 games we slipped up on. And so, again, like what Chris said last week and what David said this week, it's performance on the field. And I think if Ohio State beats Notre Dame by 14 to 20 points, dude, then I have no doubt they will run the table. And I'll be honest, I can't wait to talk to David when we come around to November time. I am looking forward to that conversation because if it is like a 10-0 team versus a 10-0 team, it's 2 10-0 teams. I'll be so pumped up in adrenaline.
That 2006-esque.
It's going to be an amazing event because I think you're going to see, this is like the Tressel, and I think you're starting to see the Tressel and Lloyd Carr collision happening again. The 2 really good coaches with 2 really good teams. And again, I think I'm looking forward to then being prepared this time around, wearing my Ohio State gear all the way up. I might even put the flag back there behind me, and we just might be rolling with I might just convince my wife to paint the whole room and just go all out and just be like, hey, I'm here. But no, it was great. It was great having David on. And I think too, for those of you that are listening, I started this show about a year ago, actually, by myself, talking in a camera for like a half hour, 45 minutes, which is very tiring when you're just talking to yourself. But to see where when I asked Josh to join and he was convinced that I wasn't going to just destroy him work-wise. And the joke always was at the beginning of this was that as long as he didn't have to do any editing or production, he was in. Right. So
it was no-brainer for me after the first episode. You're like, you want to continue to do this? And I was like, and I don't have to do like any kind of production, editing, uploading, anything. I can just come on and talk. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, exactly. So
doing podcasts on my own, I guess, is like, I know how much time goes into it.
Yeah. And so it's been fun. I think having David on, Josh, you can attest to, like, it was good to hear someone that had a grind and had his own journey. And, for both of us being from the radio world, and then after years of being away from it, being back on, it's kind of cool. Wouldn't you say? Like, it's cool to hear someone, it kind of, you even said like afterwards, like it just hyped you up a little bit, got you a little bit fired up inside.
Oh, it did. Yeah. I mean, when you talk to somebody that's kind of like been in your shoes before and see work that they've put in to get to where they're at now, I mean, it's totally motivational. I don't know how it couldn't be.
Yeah, exactly. So we just want to say, first off, like we actually, I don't think we've ever actually said this on an episode, but we do want to thank everyone that listens every week. Those that watch, those that listen, those that, retweet, or we don't have Twitter, but Instagram, share this stuff. Like, it honestly, it's cool to hear like feedback from like people that I didn't know watched our stuff, or, we do know that Josh's mom and my mom for sure watch our we know we have 2 fans for sure. It's a constant. But no, we do want to say thank you for that. And Josh, I'm excited for what's in the future. We have some exciting things coming in to play here in the next few weeks.
It's
Do
amazing.
you want to give any sneak peeks on what might be happening here in the next few shows?
I don't want to name drop anybody just in case, emergencies happen and stuff, but
True.
I'm putting a little bit more effort into trying to come and get more guests. Like after we had Chris on, it just kind of lit a fire in me. Like we really haven't.
He got addicted to it.
I did. I messaged a lot of people that I'm connected to on Twitter, where we both follow each other, and we had the DM feature there. So it was like, I'm going to go and try a little bit because like we really didn't try super hard to get anybody until Chris. And after Chris, then it was kind of like, oh man, I wonder how many other guys we could talk to. And now we got David Cohn on. So it's like, okay, let's train rolling. Yeah.
And so I do know one that I can confirm for sure is that my dad will be on at the end of July. I think it's the last show in July. He'll be on, he'll be talking some Ohio State preview, his thoughts on being an old guy in a new age of football, an old football coach in a new age of football.
I'm on segment with your dad.
Oh, it's going to be, it's going to be something. I don't know how I feel about it quite yet. We're going to kind of go with the flow with that one, but no, I'm super excited to have my dad on. It'll be a blast to have him on and to just, take part in that. But then we, like Josh said, we have a few others that you will be seeing here in the near future coming up. And again, if you do have any ideas, leave in the comments. If you're watching this, leave it in the YouTube comments. If you're, you get one of these links through one of our social medias, then just go ahead and make sure you let us know what you want to see. What do you guys want us to talk about? If there's any certain segments you want to see. I know Josh and I love coming up with different things to do and to say. So I hope that all makes sense. Thank you guys for listening today. If you've loved the episode of the podcast, go ahead and click that thumbs up button and subscribe button on YouTube. That will allow you to see, you can see the last one with Chris, which was a great episode. And we also did one with Jamie way back during March Madness. And my brother. So there was a lot of people that we've had on in the previous times. And then if you love this, make sure you give us a rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That helps our podcast kind of get around for people to see, for people to listen, and ultimately just be able to keep us growing. So again, follow all of our updates on Instagram at baseline.podcast, where you can catch up on all the different news things. We are posting things on our story pretty much every day. Josh has a thing going right now with Will Compton. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with that.
We're trying to get Will Compton on.
Yeah. So who knows? But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you have an amazing week. And again, this is a bonus episode. If you want to see more of them, then just start suggesting things to do. And maybe you'll see one here and there. So anyways, thank you guys. And we'll see you next week. See you guys. Peace.